Hello and welcome to It's Not Just Cricket. We are back in the big studio here at Spotify. We got bumped, Azim, didn't we, last week to the smaller studio, but we'll accept it. It was rest is politics, wasn't it? They're a little bit bigger than us.
Who are they?
Yeah, who are they? We want to be back in the big studio next time. Now, we're very happy to be here. Doesn't matter where we are. Very excited today as well because we've got someone in that I know we've only been doing this for a short while, but we wanted to get her in right from the off, didn't we? Because she's someone who's got some very good, strong opinions in a world where not everyone does. Got some really interesting stuff to talk to her about in general. I'm talking about an ex-England player, 50 caps for England, ex-Chelsea, ex-Arsenal, played all over the world, actually, US, Spain, Italy. I don't think there's anywhere she didn't play. And now a pundit who never sits on the fence, Lianne Sanderson. How are you?
I'm good, guys. It's funny because I was hoping you wasn't going to reel off all the teams I played for because some people said I've had more clubs than Tiger Woods.
Yeah, you moved around. We'll get onto that. I mean, how's your summer been? Were you in Germany?
No, I work in America now. So from March till November, the women's season over there, NWSL. So the studio's in Fort Lauderdale and we go on location all over. And before the pandemic, I lived in America for 12 years. So I just feel like I'm living the best life, honestly. I love what I do. And I thought being a professional footballer was the best job in the world and I loved it. But what I do now, like, I just love it. People are like, how are you here and how are you there? You know, are you really the same person? I'm like, yeah, I love it.
It's not a bad life, is it? I guess if you can travel around like that and you haven't got to do all the running as well, which is good.
Yeah.
How about the Euros? Are you glass half full, glass half empty about what happened at the Euros?
It's a difficult one because it's the first major tournament I've not worked on in a long time because I was working for ESPN in America and I couldn't do both. And I was feeling a little bit of like, I did have a little bit of fear of missing out, like FOMO, I did, because I was like, everyone's there, you know, over there. But it did feel quite nice to like watch it in a pub.
Yeah.
I've not watched a football match in a pub for probably about 10, 15 years. And I said it on my Instagram, like these blokes like, oh, you're that bird off Sky. Like they were like in the pub and they couldn't believe it. And I loved it. It was so good to just be there as a fan in a pub watching it with England fans because when you're working, the preparation you do, like, if you win, you can't celebrate on air. Do you know what I mean? So you kind of all do the show together and then you go back to the hotel and then that's it really. And then you go on to the next game. So it felt quite nice to actually enjoy it. And then I had a party at my house for the final. So all my close friends, family came. It was brilliant. Like, and I was gutted, honestly. Like I went to the final against Italy a few years ago and I wasn't that gung-ho about us winning, but that game against Spain, I thought we were going to win. And I'm not that typical English person who thinks we're going to win every game we're in. Oh, we're going to win the World Cup, we're going to win the Euros. But I genuinely felt like we were going to win. And I was so gutted. And obviously I was supposed to come on with you guys on Tuesday. And then I got asked by TalkSport to do the show. If they won, we were going to do the parade. And then I was live on air when Gareth Southgate resigned.
Wow.
So it was all a bit mad. Like, we could have been down at the parade if we won on Trafalgar Square. Then we're in the studio and then Gareth Southgate resigns when I'm live on air. So it was bittersweet, really, because I think it was time for Gareth Southgate to go. But I do think that he's been made a little bit of a scapegoat. Like, he's not the only reason why England didn't win. Yes, tactically. And I think he was reactive as opposed to being proactive. But being the England manager is so difficult. Like, It's easy to give your opinion in a pub. It's easy for me to pick I'm like, oh, yeah, Jack Grealish should be there because he's my favourite. He didn't get picked. But being a manager at that elite level, my knowledge of football, as you guys know, is high. But when I'm around some of these managers, like Pochettino is a good friend of mine, Steve McLaren, I've worked with him a lot. The way they break down the game is different level.
Really?
So it's easy to say, oh, Anthony Gordon should play. What, instead of who? Oh, Phil Foden or Jude Bellingham. Who's going to drop two of the best players in the world? We're the only country that would be saying, oh, yeah, drop Jude Bellingham. Just won the Champions League, one of the best players in the world. I understand they didn't have their best tournaments, but everyone has an opinion. And that managerial job is not an easy job. The pressure that comes with it doesn't matter if he's getting paid $5 million a year. Does help, don't get me wrong. But the feeling of, like, we're all human beings. Do you know what I mean? We've spoken about this a lot, Azim.
Yeah.
Like, we're human beings, so, like, words do matter. People throwing cups at him, I think it's a disgrace. You know, we can have our opinions about football and what shoulda, woulda, coulda, but the way that he got attacked after the game, it was almost like it was all his fault. And it wasn't just his fault.
No, it wasn't. And I think it was strange, wasn't it, how the narrative seemed to change, didn't it, in this tournament? Because before that, it was all quite positive around Southgate and the team. And he changed the way that we look at the national team again. We should always remember what it was like before. There was a real disconnect, right? He completely changed it. And I just found it really strange how we turned on him so quickly. You know, it was elements of the media, and it was a lot of social media as well. And it became quite nasty.
It's
I
becoming
thought.
toxic.
Yeah.
I honestly think that, and I said this on air the other day, I felt like he should have announced he was leaving before the tournament because I think everybody knew he was going to leave. I think he would have left even if we won. That's just my honest opinion, because what can you do? Like, maybe he'd have stayed for the World Cup in USA, Mexico and Canada, but you never know. But I just think like the players also have to take some responsibility as well, because we've got some of the best players in the world and they didn't turn up, majority of them. But I have a different opinion on that because I think there's burnout. Jude Bellingham's played 108 games. Yeah. At that high level. Like, do people understand? This ain't Sunday League football. Like, I like Sunday League football before people start saying, you know, but it's the intense environments they're in every single day. These players need a break.
But why weren't the Spanish team burnt out then?
That's a good question, actually. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. Most of them play, you know, some of them play in Spain. I mean, Morata, they weren't the best Spain team we've seen. No. Everyone's talking about Spain like they're the best team. Don't get me wrong, they won every game. But they weren't like Iniesta, Xavi, David Villa, Busquets, were they?
No one thought they were going to win at the start of the competition. They weren't even in my top 4 or 5, to be honest.
It's true. So that's a good question, Matt. I don't know the answer to that because it's like, why weren't the other players burnt out? I get that. And I think sometimes the pressure, like, for these players, the shirt is sometimes too heavy, isn't it? Like, we've seen over the years, we had Lampard, Gerrard, Scholes, you know, John Terry, Rio, top players, and they didn't win either. And they're some of the best players ever. So I don't know. There's a bigger problem to this, clearly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously a lot about England there, but I'm interested in you today. So, you know, a lot of us have watched you play for England, you know, watched you go into the broadcasting world, early life. How did you get into football? You know, I think your dad played for Crystal Palace, we chatted about. So, yeah, where did the love for football come from?
I just think literally it was in my blood, like from when I was in my mum's belly, literally I was at my dad's games, and I think subconsciously, like being in the pram, as soon as like was able to walk, I wanted to be on the pitch. And it's funny because when I look back on it now, you know, as a 5-year-old, I used to watch games religiously. That's not normal for a 5-year-old to sit there and watch a 90-minute game, is it? Without being forced to. And I wanted to. So I think my mum's even more obsessed with football than me and my dad put together, if that's even possible. She never played, but her knowledge, I always said my mum should have been a scout, because she will know about players, everything. Like, her knowledge is unbelievable. So I just think it was in me from a young age. And then from the age of 5, I just always knew I wanted to be a professional footballer. And it didn't even exist for women at that point. Like, there wasn't a professional women's league, teams. And I just always used to say to people, I'm going to be a professional footballer. Some people believe me. A lot of people laughed, you know, because they're like, yeah, all right, women don't play football. At that time, that's what it was. So I just always knew from a young age I wanted to be a professional footballer. And there was not going to be anything that stopped me from doing that.
So, played for Arsenal, Chelsea and all the other clubs that Matt said. How have you become a Man United fan then?
No, my uncle actually, my dad hates it because he's a gooner. And I played for Arsenal for 12 years. You know, the club have been great to me. Like, they used to take me, my old manager Vic Akers, into the dressing room, meet the players. I used to wash like Mark Overmars' boots, Dennis Bergkamp, like I've got shirts, everything. Vic Akers tried to brainwash me from the get-go, but he knew after a couple of years it weren't going to happen. My uncle took me to a Man United game and I fell in love with Eric Cantona when I was like literally 5 years old, and then never looked back. And I'm, you know what I'm like with Man United.
Yeah.
Like, I'm die-hard Man United fan. Like, I go in the away end, everything. Like, and people are like, what are you doing in here? Like, a couple of my mates that go, like, that are celebrities, they'll be in like hospitality and whatever. And that is nice, but I love being with the fans. You can't beat it. Like, the away fans are like the ones that, you know, are die-hard fans. Like, I like going to Old Trafford, but it's a little bit like quiet.
Different atmosphere.
Yeah. So I love Man United.
What do you reckon, looking ahead to the season with the new owners? What are the expectations? I
mean, a lot of positives. I think Sir Jim Ratcliffe has done well since he's come in and making changes, you know, bringing in a director of football that we haven't had for 12 years. It's crazy to think about. It looks like Dan Ashworth's going to come as well. And I think the moves they're making are good, but we still need better players. Like, we do. And I agree. Paul Merson said something last month. And he said Man United will end up in the exact same place if they don't make changes. And it's true. I mean, we won the FA Cup. I was buzzing about that because they actually...
the final.
Well, I couldn't go because they, of course, put the Women's Champions League final the same day as the Men's FA Cup, which should never happen. It's happened 2 years in a row now. But I thought it saved me from myself, to be honest, because I was thinking we were going to go and get absolutely hammered by City because they're the best team in the world. Do you know what I mean? So the fact that, and my producer was in my ear telling me the score as it was going in, we scored early, and I thought, all right, well, they've scored, they've got one back, and I just expected City to still win. So I'm buzzing we won the FA Cup. Eric Ten Hag, I still think the jury's still out. I'll support any manager that's at Man United, and any player that puts on that shirt, I'll always support them. But I still think when you look at our squad overall, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer looked like he was working miracles getting in the top 4 with that type of squad. Not saying Ole Solskjaer should be there, but when you look at what we did under him, getting in the top 4 with that squad that we've got, an average, below average team. Let's be honest, apart from Bruno and Garnacho, there's not really many of them that are that good, are they?
But on that, I mean, you mentioned about Southgate. By the way, I'm an Arsenal fan as well. But I think sometimes the Man United fans are a bit harsh, like with their managers, because, you know, a lot of times through the year, you're looking at the criticism that's coming in for the manager, and then you compare them to some of the other teams that are supposedly doing really well. You know, Eddie Howe getting the love that he gets up there, and you look at the Man United, especially with Harry Maguire and some of that treatment, sometimes it feels a little bit too harsh. You know, it's a tough job.
It is, and we're the biggest club in the world, and I'm not just saying that. Everybody will tell you that. You know, even if you're a former player that played for Arsenal, Man United, commercially, everywhere in the world, is massive. And it's almost like, when it is Man United, it's magnified, isn't it? Yeah. You know, when we lose a game, it's like the end of the world. Whereas you look at when Chelsea, for example, they've been doing terrible, spent $1 billion, and look where they've been doing. But no one, I've said this many times, like even on TalkSport, like no one's talking about Chelsea. Yes, they got better as the season went on, but why is it they're able to be kind of left alone with the signings they made, and Man United are being like microscopically
because they're not Man
apart?
United. They're not Chelsea. Are not as big a club as Man United.
Exactly.
Well, talking points, and also, I mean, finally as well. Like I bumped into your owners, and I know a lot gets spoken about them. And I thought they were great people.
The Glazers?
I mean, genuinely, I thought they were really nice. I had a really good time with them. But
you better not
I mean, I don't know
Old
them
Trafford
from
anytime soon.
Well, I don't know them from obviously as a Man United fan prominent view and all the business stuff and things. But you know, they were good people.
Well, they're great for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because they actually want to be owners of that club. Do you know what I mean? They're visibly there and all that. I think the fact they put our club in debt from the get-go. The thing is, it's a difficult one because they have put their money where their mouth is at times. But then it's put us in debt. So it's difficult because you look at the signings we've made, you know, that have been nowhere near the level. Anthony, Jadon Sancho. Do you know what I mean? Like these types of signings that we've made are nowhere near the level, but they've spent a lot of money. Mason Mount. Do you know what I mean? It's just the decision making at the club that's been terrible. So they have spent. I'll give them their dues, but we don't want them there.
Fair enough.
Right. We've got loads to talk about. I want to get onto punditry. I want to get onto being a woman in sports broadcasting, homophobia, racism, all sorts of stuff. But just going back to your career, you never played for Man U, did you? You played for Chelsea and Arsenal, and you also, as we've alluded to, you spent a lot of time abroad. So why did you spend so much time abroad with your career, and why did you move around so much?
That's a great question, Matt, because it makes sense to me because when I moved to America, when I was 21, I got drafted to go to Philly. I finally felt like at home. Like I felt like, sounds cheesy and everyone says, oh yeah, because Americans, you know, are over the top. But it's like, we can be great together. Do you know what I mean? Like no one was threatened by me. They were like, I'm so glad you're on my team. Even if I was better than them, I pushed them to be better. And I wasn't the best player on the team when I got there. I had to work really hard, fitness-wise. It was a different level. I won everything at Arsenal by the time I was 18, right? Champions League, everything. And I thought, you know, I didn't think I was Ronaldo, but I was like, you know, player of the season. I was getting all these accolades. When I got to America, I was like, this is amazing because I've got a lot to learn. Do you know what I mean? Like the defenders were quicker, everything. But I think
standard was a lot better.
Yeah, it was. And it was fully professional because in England it wasn't. Man United didn't have a women's team till 5 years ago. Otherwise, my dream would have been to play for Man United. When they announced they had a women's team, it was the day I signed for Juventus. So it was almost like if I'd have known Man United were coming in, it might have been a different conversation. Do you know what I mean? Because that would have, if I could have ended my career at Man United, that would have been the icing on the cake. Why I moved so much, I never really felt like when I had a manager that really liked me and wanted me, I felt good. But I think a lot of managers I've had have always tried to kind of limit me and put me in a box of like, you think you're better, you're too flash because I have my hair different. Do you know what I mean? Or I like to wear different colour boots. I was one of the first people when I was younger. I had green, like lime green Puma Cell boots. No one else had them. They were all wearing black boots. You know what I mean? And I'm just me. I like to get my nails done. I love to wear makeup. And I feel like sometimes, and I'm a nice person, I'm not perfect, but when people meet me, they're like, you're so nice. And I'm like, why would you think any differently? Like, don't judge a book by its cover because my exterior is quite harsh on the eye maybe to some people, but inside I'm like a puppy. Like my nickname in America by my teammates is a puppy because I'm literally the most sensitive person. You know this about me. I'm so sensitive that like people don't see that about me. So I think a lot of coaches I've had, I've always felt threatened by me. It's weird because I've always gotten well with my teammates. I've never had problems with my teammates. You know what I mean? Like ever. And the coaches always never really knew how to take me, I felt like. And then when I found myself with a coach, they'd end up getting sacked. Do you know what I mean? So, and in the women's game, I mean, Lucy Bronze just signed for Chelsea. Like, you move around a lot. You know, even if you are one of the best players, you move all the time. In the women's game, it's just how it is. And I think I was at Arsenal for 12 years. And then after that, when you're in America, you know, you move around a lot because there's a draft system, there's an expansion draft. And honestly, if I look back on my career, I've won everywhere I've gone. But I do wish that I was playing under Serena Wiegman right now. Do you know what I mean? With the Lionesses. Like, because she's a coach that allows you to be you and, you know, communicates. That's all you ask for. I think a lot of coaches would feed you lip service and then never really kind of, you know how to take me. And I don't need to be taken. Do you know what I mean? Just let me be me. And I felt like in America, they let me be me. And I played in like Cyprus, you know, Spain, Italy. And that's has its pros and cons because, you know, different areas. I lived in Italy. People didn't see anyone that looked like me. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And there was stares, there's looks. In Spain, I used to get comments from people walking down the street because of how I act, because of how I look. Like whether it's I didn't speak fluent Spanish then. I'm not fluent now, but I can speak a little bit of all the places I've played in. You don't have to speak the language to know when someone's being horrible. Do you know what I mean? Like, so the comments that the looks you get in other countries, it wasn't very nice. So, yeah. But
Was that just ignorance down to, as you say, just not seeing people who look like you?
Yeah, I think so. And also, like, I'm very respectful of cultures as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, I work in Qatar a lot and my girlfriend comes with me. And I think, you know, you respect that culture, they'll respect you. And that's the reality. Like, people in Qatar love me. I get no abuse when I'm in Qatar, and you'd think it'd be the reverse. And I wear suits on air, you know, I'm quite masculine presenting, but I still love makeup on me. And people love me there. Whereas in England, it's like I get more abuse here than I did if I was in Qatar that have the worst laws you could think of. Do you know what I mean?
That's crazy.
Well,
it is.
Well, we will jump on to Qatar in a minute, but your England career, it it didn't end the way you would have liked. Did you know you supported Eni Aluko when she spoke about her experiences? And did you know deep down that would mean that you might have played your last game for England?
I think so. But also, I didn't really care at that point because it was about doing what was right. And I think, unfortunately, no one else spoke out about it, which still till this day eats me up sometimes. Yeah. You know, I still have to see people that I think you should have done more than you did. And I used to not want to work in the women's game based upon that, you know, because it used to upset me. And you get that feeling in your stomach where you just feel a bit sick because you're like, I know you were in the same room. I know you heard this. I know you used to be my roommate. We were talking about it. Do you know what I mean? But these people have to live with their conscience. So my mum and dad used to say to me, I'd be like, I don't really want to go to this event. And even my girlfriend, my fiance Ellis, would say to me, no, you go. Because they're the ones that have to live with their own, you know, decisions they've made. So, I don't know, it's a difficult one because it's almost like people forget about what people didn't do. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of people that are in the public eye right now that didn't do enough. Nowhere near enough.
Well, no one does. I mean, that's so unique because, you know, having gone through my experiences, people, especially those that are, you know, getting looked after by the system and are in privileged positions, you know, you expect a lot more from, and they don't, you know, a lot of times it's very unique for someone else to come into and support it the way you supported Eni. And, you know, as you say, a lot of people will forget the bystanders. But, you know, I think it's massive that you did support her and, you know, naturally.
And I would do it again if I had to. Do you know what I mean? I don't regret that in any way, shape or form.
Not everyone actually would know the story, right? So just to anyone who wouldn't, you know, just explain exactly what happened in that situation.
So our former manager, Mark Sampson, he made some not so great comments to Eni and Drew Spence and just things in meetings that he would say that, like, I think he forgot where he was. Do you know what I mean? You're not in a pub with your mates now, mate. Do you know what I mean? Like,
when you say that, I mean, like, what was the tone?
Well, you know, he said to Drew Spence about how many times she'd been arrested. It was her first camp. She'd been away. It's that subconscious, unbiased racism. Yeah. So some people, you don't have to just say a derogatory word for it to be racist. You know, it's these things that are deep-seated in people. And I got on really well with him, actually, funnily enough. When he first became the manager, he brought me back into the mix and I felt like he liked me. But it was almost like the comments he would make, and then there was this time where we were playing at Wembley. I remember it like it was yesterday, right? Because we didn't play at Wembley a lot then, so it was like sold out. And the night before, we were at the Hilton, you know, the one right at Wembley at the end, and we were staying there. And we used to put our on the board, we'd put who was coming to the game. So old school, innit? Like, you'd have to put on a piece of paper how many tickets you needed for the game. And Annie was putting her tickets down on the board, on the piece of paper. And he said to her, oh, is your family come from Nigeria? Because Annie's Nigerian. And he said, make sure they don't bring Ebola with them, right? So that type of stuff. And obviously, Annie was upset by that. I heard it. Me and Annie were always with each other, along with Jill Scott. Like, we were always with each other. Do you know what I mean? So, and then when she got to the table, she was like, I can't believe you just said that. And then obviously, Annie would come to my room. You know, we weren't roommates at the time and we were just chatting, but it wasn't like she was crying, but we just couldn't believe that he said something like that. But then at that time, it was like, what do you do in that moment? And then there were times where, like, we used to get the film sent to us, you know, like after a game, and they forgot to turn off the audio and they were absolutely hammering Annie's performance, but it was our coaches that were doing it. And they sent it out by accident.
Right.
So therefore, there's all these things that were happening. And, you know, so it wasn't like necessarily that he was horrible to me. Do you know what I mean? Because I've only got 50 caps. When I say only, I should have had more than 50 caps for England. Not because I sit here thinking I'm like the greatest thing since sliced bread, but that's the reality. It's true. Everyone will tell you the same thing. Like, I was like our Harry Kane. I was on every single advert, right? Everywhere. I was doing every interview for England. I was like the poster girl. Then all of a sudden, I just disappeared. And no one else, people come up to me now like, oh, did you play with Lucy Bronzer? I'm like, we won a bronze medal together. Like, I was on the team. I've won everything you could think of. But it's almost like they wanted to kind of just put me out of the mix. So it's like people then, I had to reinvent myself when I was the one that did something good. Do you know what I mean? Like, I did the right thing. We spoke about this loads of times, the team. When you do the right thing, sometimes it's a hard thing to do because then everyone else, you're seen as the troublemaker. Everyone knows I'm not a troublemaker, but I know when I see those people, right, that didn't stick up for us, they look me in the eye and they feel guilty. I can see it in their eye and they have to live with themselves when they do. I don't. Yeah. And I walk with my head held high.
And also, like, you know, like Lianne talks about, it's not just the N word and the P word.
Yeah.
That it's actually comments like this because just, you know, and a lot of people, I don't like the unconscious bias thing because I think that it's just another excuse to, you know, let people get away with, you know, and that's the comment he made there and then. Imagine what's been made behind the scenes, and then when decisions are being made on your career by one person, you know, what goes through the head of that person while they're making that decision. These are all things. And then what it gets to is, for us, it's like you start questioning yourself, you know, am I the problem? You know, I seem to find myself in this situation. Is it me? And then it starts making you go internal and it's not. I'm not the problem. You're the problem. Unfortunately, far too many times as a society, you know, and we've spoken about this over the last few weeks, we try and find excuses for these types of racism, and it hurts. It seriously hurts.
And it's difficult as well. Sorry, guys, just to interrupt that. When I say they tried to just kind of shut me up and put me to the side, like, we got our legacy caps and they forgot about me.
Just gonna
Do you know what I mean?
That, yeah.
Like, and it's like, you don't keep forgetting about me. They forgot about my 50th cap when I was in China. When you get your 50th cap or your 100th cap, you get a commemorative jersey. Yeah. You get, like, you know, a video message from home if you're away. You know, like, it's a nice thing. Your mum and dad come on the pitch, your family. They forgot about that.
You don't just forget about that.
Why
though,
always me? Yeah. I'm not trying to sound like Balotelli. You know what I mean, though? But it's always me. Why is that? And that's the thing that people, like, don't understand. I still, till this day, don't understand. And to be fair, Debbie Hewitt at the FA now, she wrote me a handwritten card. You know, I don't have beef with the FA. Yeah. You know, they're the ones that did wrong. And I am open to people rectifying their wrongs because not everybody was against me at that time. Do you know what I mean? Like, unfortunately, I understand why some players didn't do more. I do, because they're part of the system. But the ones that are my mates, best friends, I expected a bit more from them.
Yeah, and, you know, everything, as you say, trying to do the right thing doesn't always, you know, make it comfortable. But ultimately, they're going to have to look at themselves in the mirror and face you. And, you know, the way you've been able to reinvent yourself, broadcasting, was that quite a natural move? Is that something you wanted to do, or did you just fall into it?
It's funny because from a young age, I used to do things. I was on Live and Kicking. I did a mini documentary, and everyone. I remember Zoe Ball, and I met her the other year at an awards, and I said to her, "Do you remember me?" And she actually remembered the show, and I was only about 7 because it's mad. Like, I'm up for an award sitting next to Zoe Ball. When I was 7, I was on her show, like Live and Kicking with Jamie Feakston. So I always felt like I love TV. I was saying this to you before. I love live TV and live radio. It's not for everybody because some people freeze. They can talk in a green room, but they get on air and they don't have any words. It happens. When people call in TalkSport, they sometimes can't get their words out. Do you know what I mean? Because they're nervous, and I get that. But I think for me, I just feel like I love it. Do you know what I mean? And to be fair, like I never actually officially retired. Like I never got any, which doesn't surprise me, but no teams were posting about me retiring or anything. Like no one even reached out to say, oh, you retiring or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? So I never officially retired. I was in New York training my kids because I have my own football academy in New York. And I got a phone call to say, do you want to come and do the Women's World Cup for beIN Sports in Qatar? And I was like, yeah, when? They said tomorrow. So I literally jumped on a flight that night. It took me it was like 18 hours to get there. And I did my first tournament. It's a bit like when Gary Neville first did Monday Night Football and he looks back on himself and he laughs. That's how I feel. When I'm doing beIN, I did well, but I just look so young. Do you know what I mean? Like the way I speak, I feel like I speak differently. I said to my fiance, I said, do you think I speak differently? She's like, yeah, like, I don't know, it's weird. Like I speak quite fast anyway, but like looking back on that, it just almost like, then after that, people saw me and then I think they thought I'd retired and then it was just like a domino effect, you know? And I think, like I say, my opinion is my opinion. It's not facts. And I will give my opinion. I'm not going to sit on the fence. And it doesn't mean we can all have conversations, but it doesn't have to be confrontational and angry all the time. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just really blessed that I work for companies and I'm quite selective, but I think companies are also selective in how they pick people because some companies wouldn't want someone like me because they want you to just sit there and say, this person did really well, that person did really well when they didn't. We know there are companies out there. We don't need to name them, but they exist. Yeah. Whereas the companies I work for, I can say what I want. And that's what I love about TalkSport because, you know, people come up to me on the street and they say, you say what I feel. Because I've grown up going to my dad's games, you know, going to the pub. So I'm able to take on all the information from people. And I just talk on air like I'm talking to my dad when we watch Match of the Day every Saturday when I was a kid.
Yeah. No, that's what I love about listening to you is that you do not sit on the fence. You give your opinion and not everyone does, right? As you said there, like some pundits do not do that. And some people like employing pundits like that for some reason. What about being a woman in broadcasting? Do you think there is still quite a bit of resistance to it from some elements of the fan base? I
think there always will be. And I always compare it to, I'm doing a lot of men's dream job. And I think it's hard for them to take that a woman is doing their job, that they've grown up. Every boy wants to be a professional footballer and girl, to be fair now, because it's more visible. Yeah. But growing up, everybody wants to be a professional footballer, right? And everybody wants to also work in football. It's like our religion in this country, isn't it? It's like, I feel sorry for other sports people because it's like other sports don't exist when they do. Do you know what I mean? Like the Cricket World Cup, Rugby World Cup, it's like they're going on and these people are amazing, the athletes playing in it, but no one really talks about it because it's all about football, right? But I just think like, yeah, I think what people try to do is they try to force you off the air. It happened to Laura Woods. It's happened to Karen Carney. It's happened to Alex Scott, me, Ennie, all of us, right? And I think when they realise you're not going anywhere, it tones down a little bit. I always know if I'm on Sky, if I'm on TalkSport, I'll get abuse. And when I first started doing this, you learn as you go along. I don't look at my phone when I'm on air anymore because there used to be a couple of, say you get 10 like great comments or tweets, you see that one tweet and it gets in your head. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So like, therefore, I'm not looking at it. All I'm going to rely upon is my producers, people that employ me, their feedback, and my agent. Do you know what I mean? Like what they feel. Why do I care about what, you know, John Smith down the pub thinks of me? And it's hard to take because there's times when I've cried. I'm not going to lie. Like it isn't easy. I'm sitting here in strength, but it's taken me a long time to get to this point because I just know, like, when I did Sky with Vicky, and was it Joe? And I knew as soon as I came off air, because we're three women, that was going to be it. And that was it. Do you know what I mean? It was an onslaught. And I got home that night and I just started crying to my partner. I was just like, I don't know how much more I can take of this. But luckily, the companies that I work for actually have, like, people that reach out. So when they see me getting that type of abuse, they have that support system in place now within the companies, like, you know, that can come and help you. Because I've had 2 death threats. Do you know what I mean? Like, really? And it's hard. Like my mum, it affects my mum. People message my mum, my dad. You know, people started messaging my missus. Like, you know, all this nonsense. And it's like, they have to take that on as well. And it's only because of my job. You know, I don't go past a builder laying bricks, which is an incredible job, by the way, and say, you're not doing that bricklaying properly. You're rubbish. Imagine every day you go to work and you just get pelters. Everyone has a breaking point. So when people say, oh, you know, just ignore it. It don't work like that.
Oh, just ignoring it.
We're all human.
I mean, as I said to you, when we first met, we did a show on Sky together and, you know, being tagged into the tweet. And, you know, I've had my fair share of abuse over the last few years. I mean, even now, you put I tweet now, and I've got to a point where I've got comfortable in my skin and going, I'll tweet and then I won't read.
Yeah.
You know, but the problem is, even that, people send it to you. You know, people send it to you, and that you might get 10 really, really nice ones, but that one you get, and it's like in this country now, and you look at some of the political rhetoric, death threats is just like, oh yeah, you know, I had another death threat.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's like it's become a norm, and we're sort of just letting it go. It's like decriminalized. You know, before, you know, threat to kill would be taken seriously.
All because I said that Mitrovic
Yeah.
wouldn't have a good season in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and he did. Fair play to him. I wasn't saying I can't stand Mitrovic. Fair play to him. He had a good season. You know, now he's in Saudi, isn't he? But and I got these death threats from Fulham fans, right? And then when I had to go to work at Craven Cottage, I was honestly, I'm in an argument if I should go there or not, because where the media entrance is right by where the players go in, where the fans are waiting for autographs. I'm not joking. I was so scared going there because I felt like that person might have been there. As crazy as that sounds, like
Well,
when you're
it's
getting
not
those types
crazy.
of death threats, and to be fair, like TalkSport got me a car there, car back, all that type of stuff. But that little walk that I had to do into Craven Cottage, like I just wiped my head down. Do you know what I mean? And that's not a nice feeling. I don't think people realise that. To be fair, the police did do, like the police flagged it up before I'd even seen the tweet and reached out to me. And like, you know, the case is still ongoing and, you know, it could press charges and that type of stuff. But like, I felt scared going to work, and that's not nice, is it?
Well, I mean, even the press charges thing, I mean, I'd love to know your opinion on it, because you feel like, you know, constantly you're the one having to make a decision, you know, of, you know, putting these people back in their place. But all you're trying to do is go and do your job. Why, you know, why is it so difficult? Why do people get behind a keyboard and go so far that it gets a human being to a breaking point? It's completely beyond me.
I know, sometimes I do want to just say, like, just F off. Do you know what I mean? Like, I really do, because it gets too much sometimes. But then sometimes when I go back at people, like the other day, hindsight's a great thing, isn't it, right? People tweeting after the England game, what shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah.
Do it during the game. Do you know what I mean? Like, why are you then saying, oh, because I tweeted about Ivan Toney should have come on
Yeah, I
before
saw
Ollie
that.
Watkins. They're like, oh, yeah, you, all this tweets, all this abuse came to me. I said, I still stand by that. But you're tweeting after the fact. Isn't it easier said than done?
Of course it is. But I think there's an issue with that. You're getting more abuse because you're a woman saying it, right? And I think, you know, people like Joey Barton, the fact that he can go out there and have a podcast, and actually quite a few people follow him, right? And you were saying earlier, some people are going on his podcast, which suggests that if he thinks that that's the way to be relevant and that's the way to go about things and keep himself in the news, there's a reason behind that, because he knows that there are actually a group of people that will listen to what he's got to say, and that's quite worrying, because that fuels a lot of this stuff, right?
It does. And the thing is, I don't even want to give any energy to Joey Barton, because thankfully, and I say thankfully, he's not come after me. But I get tagged in tweets every single day from people saying, like yesterday when I was on TalkSport, people mention him with my name in it. Like, I'm like, okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, what? Why don't you have something to say? Why do you have to go through Joey Barton to then come to me? So when I say I'm grateful, I don't need that type of energy in my life. Do you know what I mean? Because when all this stuff was happening, I reached out to Lucy. Obviously, Lucy Ward's a good friend of mine. Ennie's a good friend of mine, to make sure they're okay. Because at the end of the day, what happens is when people in the public eye post stuff and have certain opinions, like Kevin Keegan had the same opinion similarly, it doesn't help, because then it allows other people. Do you know what I mean?
It
to
empowers
then,
them.
yeah,
It emboldens them to, you know, to go out. When someone with a profile does it, it's weird, because we've been chatting about this, and, you know, I'm going through something similar at the minute. When someone with a profile does it, what it does is it emboldens and empowers everyone else to do it. And then when you get that abuse, and the one thing I find interesting, because I follow you, you know, I follow your story and stuff, is like when you respond, and how do you make that decision to respond? Because I'm always battling with this thing of, do I respond and give it energy and actually cause more trauma to myself, or do I leave it? You know, where do you sit on that, and how do you actually, or do you just go with how you're feeling at the time?
I think sometimes I don't act upon emotion, because I've learned as I've got older, you know, reaction. Give yourself a second and then breathe. Do you know what I mean? And if I always write out a tweet and I second guess it, I never tweet it. But I think it's a difficult balance. I agree with you, because I ignore. And then the thing is, sometimes when I say go back at them, not in an aggressive way, one of them I said, I'm glad I'm on your mind at 6 o'clock in the morning, mate. Do you know what I mean? Like, you woke up in the morning and you're tweeting me, of all people. Like, not little old me, but why are you messaging me? Like, there's a lot of footballers, or there's like people in the public eye that might not particularly like. They might not even like me. But why do I need to let them know that? Like, why do you need to tweet the person? So, but then sometimes I think people want you to respond, and then they kind of say, "Oh, fair play, Lianne," and they follow me.
Yeah.
Do you know what, Azim? I don't know if you get this. They follow me. Why are you following me if you say I'm rubbish and you don't like me? I don't get that. What are you doing following me?
I have it with a lot of Leeds United fans. As soon as I see a Leeds United fan, I have to go, I'm not reading this. But just don't follow me.
Yeah,
go follow
what are you following
someone
me
else.
for? Like, if you don't like me, I don't get people, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we had Sanjay Bandari in here a few weeks ago, and as he said, Twitter in particular, or X, is just a cesspit, isn't it, these days? It's so negative, and to be honest with you, I kind of try and stay off it as much as I can, and I'm on the other different kinds of social media, so I think they're a bit better. I mean, look, in general, it does seem like with women's football, though, things have changed massively, right? I mean, how different do you think it is now to the way the game is perceived by the general public as to how it was when you were playing back in the day when you had to go to America because it was better standard of football?
Yeah, it's funny because I've always said this and people laugh, right? I love Beyonce, and I don't go to the O2 waiting for her to come. I go when I know she's going to be there. And I've always said about this, they never used to promote our games enough. They used to promote one game, which was the FA Cup final. That was the only game that was on TV in a year, the FA Cup final, right on BBC. Then we'd play at Wembley, it'd get mad promotion, be everywhere. All of a sudden, the Lionesses are playing in England, and, it's everywhere. And that's amazing. Tower Bridge, billboards, everything. That's exactly what you want. So I've always said, like, the marketing has always been beforehand atrocious because no one knew we had a game. Like, even one of my, it still could be even better though. Like, one of my best mates lives on the same street as Leighton Orient, which is where Tottenham women play. There's no advertising around there about the games. You come out this train station, it's on the train station, but my best mate has got a season ticket now for Tottenham women. She might not be able to go to all the games, but wants to support it. So it's all about promotion. And I've always felt like Arsenal always did a really good job. And that's why Arsenal sell out the Emirates every game when the women played there, because we've been in existence since 1987 and the fans love us because we always used to win. So it's been an ongoing thing, and Arsenal were always ahead of the game with that type of stuff. So I just think it's the visibility. And to be fair...
So the interest was always there, do you reckon? Because, I mean, when you look at how it's grown so quickly, I'm inclined to think the same thing, because all of us, now you're looking at it, as you say, Arsenal sell out the Emirates pretty much every time they play. FA Cup final, massive crowd, loads of clubs now getting big numbers. That interest must have been there. It was latent. It was almost suppressed.
Yeah, and I think the players are quite fortunate that they almost pressed the green button on it now. Do you understand? I don't think I missed the boat because I still work in it, and I'm so grateful, and I'm happy for every person that plays in the women's game that's getting a good salary. There's still more that needs to be done in the Championship and the leagues below, because those players are getting nowhere near the support that they should be getting. But I think, like, the players are very fortunate that they're still playing when they press the green button on this, because it has always been there, genuinely. Like I said, at Arsenal, we've always had amazing fans. I mean, we used to do photo shoots, like, with your male sponsor, and they'd pay our wages. And mine was, like, Thierry Henry one year. Then it was Dennis Bergkamp. Then I had Theo Walcott, because we were, like, the same age and the same position. And we were in the club shop with the men. So, like, things like that, marketing... That's why Arsenal have always been ahead of the game. Like, you look at Chelsea women, they don't really sell out Stamford Bridge, but it's only because, and they're the best team, one of the best teams in the world. They're better than Arsenal.
Yeah.
But they don't have that same rapport with the fans because it's been built for years. So I do believe it's always been there, but it's just been undervalued. And again, strong business people want to get involved now. I know some of my colleagues, male ex-players, want to get in the women's game because they know there's money there. Do you know what I mean? That they want to work in it. Oh, Lianne, what do you reckon about me doing commentary in the women? Absolutely, do it. I want more men to be working in the women's game. I don't come from the place where I think it always has to be women. Do you know that?
I agree.
I'm sure you do because you're a bloke. But do you know what I mean? Sometimes I'm like, why does it always... I'm a woman, but why does it have to be like the referees? Why can't we have the male referees refereeing in the women's game? Like, why does it have to be like that? Sometimes I think we go too far. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're not asking for that. We're asking for the best people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it should be the same in men's football and women's football. I think you should have a mix of both, because then you get different views, different opinions, different ways of saying things. What's the next step then for women's football? Do they need to be playing, I'm talking WSL here, do they need to be playing more regularly in the big stadia? Because, Arsenal one week will go from packing out the Emirates to playing at their other ground, which is Boreham Wood.
Yeah.
to how many do they fit in there then?
It's like 3,500,
Right.
4,000.
Right, and so you can pack out a 60,000 stadium, and then you've got to play in a 3,500 stadium the week after. That doesn't make any sense to me.
No, and I think that the club's realising that because they've announced more games this year at the Emirates. I think they've announced 15, that type of number. And I think Chelsea will probably do the same. And I think, unfortunately, Chelsea play at Kings Meadow. A lot of the clubs are outgrowing. They're selling out every game at Bournemouth and Kings Meadow. Those teams. But what I will say is teams like City, Man United at Lee Valley, like Man City women play at the Academy Stadium, the men's, and they don't really sell out. And when you look at the other games like Everton, they're not selling out their games. So why is that? Do you know what I mean? Like the women's game, we could talk about it growing, and it has grown. But if you look at the attendances, like I think one of the Everton games this year, there was 900 people there. That's not good enough. So we can talk about Arsenal, 60,000 sellout, but my concern is the other teams. Do you know what I mean? Like that. Where do we find that balance of making sure we're sharing the load, and it's not just becoming the Lionesses the only thing that's being focused on? Because there's a lot of really good players in the WSL that don't play for England because our national team is so good. Do you know what I mean? But because you don't play for England doesn't mean you're not good. You know what I mean? There's loads of players that could play for England, but they can't because you can only pick 26 players for a tournament.
Well, I think on that divide then, just switching to, I guess, your own club, Man United, and there's been a few stories recently around the women's team and with the new owners having to sort of go and use different changing room facilities and porta cabins. Does that not, I guess, challenge the fact that, there is a lot of growth, but there's a long way to go? And when there's a lot of talk about things being great, but then the action, stuff like that must take us back a little bit, no? It
does, and I think that's ultimately, Casey Stoney was their manager when they first came in existence, and she spoke about this. That's one of the reasons why she left, because of the lack of, and I'm not biased because I'm a Man United fan, men's fan. Women's team is Arsenal for me, and it's different. But I think, I don't think teams can get away with this type of stuff now. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's public knowledge now. Yeah. That's the reality that they're going to be getting changed. It won't. I'm sure that will not happen. They'll have to find a way where it won't happen. But then again, Mary Earps has left. The best players will leave. Lesia Russo left. They had Tobin Heath, Kristen Press. They had loads of players. So my question is, there's a reason behind the fact that people are leaving, And it reminds me of when Barcelona men were travelling, right, on a plane a few years ago when Messi was there. And the men were in business class, first class, and the women were in economy. Someone posted a picture. The girls have never flown economy again. But why should it take someone posting for that to be the reality? When I played for England, one time we went to China, we had to choose if we wanted to go business class on the way there or on the way back, and we'd all alternate. Come on, we're playing for England. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, so on the way there, I said, do I want to go on business class on the way there? So half of us were in economy and half of us were in business class. How weird is that? How crazy is that to think about? And I only retired 5 years ago. It's not like dinosaur times before people say, oh, yeah, well, it was 20 years ago. No. It was recent.
It's incredible, isn't it? We had the same issue with women's cricketers, actually, for a while. It took a while for them to finally get business class flights, going to Australia and places like that and not flying business class. It's just ridiculous.
Thing is, people listen to that and go, oh, you're in a privileged position. But it's not about, being in a privileged position. It's about that, treating men and women the same, not creating that differences. Because, as you say, your actions matter, and the exposure you give the girls, the exposure you give the sport, then repays back, and it shows you that interest is, it's never not been there. It's just for a long time. Those running the game, it's been lazy rhetoric to try and get away from and just concentrate on the men's sport. Really.
I do think as well, though, that sometimes people are too quick to jump down people's throats. Like when Harry Kane made that comment about England not winning a major tournament, right, since 1966. He's not trying to be offensive to the women's team. So everybody went on this bandwagon of, well, the Lionesses won. He plays for England men, and he's talking about the men's team. Harry Kane's a good guy. He's not trying to be that person. And the one time he didn't forget, but he's talking about the men. There's this onslaught of abuse. Oh, the women won it. We know the women won it, but he's playing for the men's team. So sometimes I think people are too quick to jump down people's throats.
Well, that's social media for you, isn't it, really? I do, I guess being, when you're in the public eye, in any sort, and you miss things like that, it's just a natural, I guess, social media thing. Because
Leanne's
language
right,
does
though,
matter.
isn't she? But he wasn't trying
no, I'm
to
not
say
saying that he was.
And when you do that, I feel the same about racism, right? So not everything is racist, right? We've discussed this a few times. And when you're sort of calling something out that isn't racist being racist, that actually doesn't help in the battle against racism or sexism in this case, because you're just creating more of a like them and us or polarization, like
No,
people who do that,
No, I disagree with that because if someone look how you feel is up to you. How you or how how Leanne's taken that's up to you. Someone else somewhere might have taken that differently, and that's fine as well. They're allowed to feel differently about it. I don't.
But then if you abuse someone for doing that, then
no, you shouldn't
that's not
abuse.
right?
I don't think you should abuse anyone regardless of anything. You can disagree respectfully. You can have a conversation, have a debate. But I think we've got to be careful when it comes to anything around discrimination specifically. Is don't say the person calling it out is the problem. Everyone can take how they take things can be different. But I fully agree that there shouldn't have been a pile on someone like Harry Kane, who's clearly a good guy.
So in that case, they were a problem because a collective group of people.
The abuse, him getting abused. No one should get abused, regardless of anything. You should be able to robustly disagree with people and still be able to, respect each other, have a conversation. You don't need to have.
I think common sense comes into play sometimes as well. In a sense, I know that sounds crazy, but it's like similar to when the referees are making these decisions in the game. VAR. It's like sometimes you have to use your common sense. As crazy as that sounds, and we all receive common sense in different ways. Because, like I said, sometimes I think people are too quick to jump down people's throats and not actually take a step back and think, what are they trying to say? And also, people can talk about this. One thing that really bothers me is when people talk about education. I'm sick of hearing that. Oh, yeah, Enzo Fernandez, he needs to be educated. Education, take him to a workshop. Come on.
What's that going to do?
Like, I think it's just a lame excuse for when people do stuff like that.
Well, it's another tick box solution. That's not a solution. We end up in the same place and it doesn't really help.
Yeah, I know. I understand what you're saying. And Mikey Holding's a big one, isn't he, for educating? Sanjay Bandari was saying the same thing. I totally get what they're saying. But with some people, if you're willing, for example, if you're Enzo Fernandez, if you're willing to sing that song and do it so wholeheartedly, something pretty deep ingrained there. And
it's not just him either. I mean, I tweeted about it yesterday. I said he's lucky he's not my teammate. But then I'd probably be the one that would be the troublemaker saying because obviously he's got black players on his team at Chelsea, Fofana, that type of thing.
Who called it out?
Yeah, exactly. But
good on him.
But it was the whole team. You can't see the whole team in the thing because people are going to me, well, what about Garnacho and Martinez because they're at Man United? I'm like, well, I can only comment on who I'm seeing in the video. And he had the video on there. And I think this is the problem as well, that I hate to think what they sing behind closed doors and the types of conversations that they're having behind closed doors if they're singing that so openly on a bus.
And the thing is, Lianne, when you're the victim of that, what they think behind closed doors, but you can't call that out either because if you do, you're the problem. And that's my point about we've got to be careful that we don't. I'm not saying Harry Kane was or anything, but we've got to be careful that whenever it comes to them conversations, the problem is not the person calling it out because everyone can feel differently. But there should never be an excuse for abuse.
But they're calling out something that we just don't agree with.
And that's fine.
Was not right. But when you do that, you create a pylon.
Well,
which is unfair.
That's where social media, and that's where social media and the algorithms of social media is a problem because actually it monetizes that. Everyone jumps out for these extreme views. Who can have the best take? And that is a worry because our society now around media and social media, that is what it revolves around. And that's where, just step back a little bit and go, well, hold on a minute. He's a good fella who wasn't trying to, demean anyone else.
Same as when they do the all-time goal scorers, that type of stuff. And they sometimes forget about the women. Like, that is wrong. Don't get me wrong. But it's like, sometimes I just think people are just too quick to say, oh, well, that person got the all-time leading goal scorer. Like, we're not trying to be like the men. We're not trying to compete with the men. We're just trying to be respected as women playing women's football. Football's football. No matter if it's women, men's, whatever. It is football. We all have the same amount of players on the pitch. I played in 2 World Cups, which was very difficult. Do you know what I mean? Like, playing for my country doesn't mean it was anything lesser than, say, Harry Kane because he's a man. But I think sometimes people need to take a breath and a step back and think, okay, well, they're not meaning it like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure Harry Kane went to bed that night. He probably saw the tweets. He probably got a message from the PR person at England and he probably felt terrible about what he said, but he wasn't even meaning it like that.
Yeah.
Right, I want to move this on because we're running out of time a bit, actually.
Are we?
Yeah, a little bit. And
in other words, sharp, Lianne.
it's Azim. So I want to speak about being gay in football. You mentioned there before you got a girlfriend. You've been out for a while, have you? Like, when did you come out?
The first ever. I was the first ever
Really?
footballer. Yeah, and it was about 12 years ago now. And it didn't even feel that big of a deal. Do you know what I mean? At the time. But I think as time goes on, like, imagine if this was now and I was the first. Can you imagine the amount of publicity I would get? Because I feel like people like myself have allowed other people to feel comfortable in themselves, and it's a very selfless thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't wait around for pats on the back because no one knows that was the first. Do you know what I mean? Like, first in England, that was publicly out. A lot of teammates were gay and are gay, but they weren't comfortable, and that's fine. Do you know what I mean? Like, not everyone has to be that way. And I was just blessed, and I am blessed that I'm come from a family that accept it. And everyone's different. But then, again, I think it became my definition. And that was a problem in itself, because when I signed for Juventus, that was the only thing they wanted to talk about, was me being gay. I'm like, I've scored 100 goals in two seasons for Arsenal. I've won the Champions League, all these accolades that I've won, and you want to talk, every interview was about being gay. So in the end, I said to them, I'm not doing any more interviews about being the first gay player in Italy, because honestly, I'm not. Let's be honest. Do you know what I mean? There's other people. And it's almost like, sometimes I felt like when I played in different countries, the resentment is there from my teammates sometimes, because they've got partners and they're not able to be with who they are. Whereas teams sign me in countries that maybe not that open about sexuality, knowing that I'm gay. My partner was on the team at the time, my ex-girlfriend, and, you know, they know we were together. So it's like there's this resentment I feel from some teammates, because they're not able to be comfortable. They've been their partners for like 8-9 years, but they don't feel like they can be who they are. And then I feel this weird energy shift from people sometimes. I felt it. And I'm an empath, so I feel it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel the energy, and I felt it from teammates before, when it's like, you know, they've had partners, they're not able to be who they are. So I'm really blessed, I'm really lucky. But I think it just then became my definition of me. Like, and I'm like, I'm a footballer. Like, that happens to be gay. Do you know what I mean? Like, Who cares? But everyone else seemed to care.
Well, how was, I mean, on that topic then, when the Qatar opportunity came, you know, it was well documented around some of the issues in the region. So, you know, how was that for you? Did you have to, you know, was there a little bit of a, you know, question that whether I should do it or not do it? You know, how did you come to the decision of going, and what was your experience like?
Yeah, it's funny because I did question if I should go. Obviously, it would be in my mind. But do you know what? I felt like by going originally, physically being there, seeing people like me can really open up a lot of opportunities for other people to be welcomed into that country. Now, they've got awful laws that shouldn't exist, right? But just because the law is in place doesn't mean that they're living it out. Now, I understand when I go there, I have a privileged life. Someone brought that to my attention. They're like, well, of course, they're not going to show you X, Y, and Z. They're going to take you to the best hotels and the best places. But I went out with my partner, Ellis. We went out in the souk. Everything felt fine, felt safe. Could leave your phone on the table. You live in Dubai, you know what it's like. Leave your phone on the table. No one's stealing anything from you. I never had one abusive tweet in the whole time I was there. I've done 2 tournaments there now. I've been there probably 5-6 times to Qatar before the World Cup. Should it have been there? No, let's be honest. But it was there. Do you know what I mean? And I hope that people have the same energy for the next World Cup, but it's not in an Arab country.
Yeah.
Because promise you now, in USA, Mexico and Canada, there's a lot of issues in those countries. There's issues in every country. But I bet you they won't have the same energy. You know, the gun law in America. I love America. That country's like my second home. But I'm sure they won't have the same energy for it as they did for Qatar.
I mean, the energy, you talk about energy and just diverting away from football. You know, we've got Olympics in Paris very soon. And, you know, there's a ban on hijab. You know, Muslim women can't wear hijabs playing sport. And I'm watching, you know, I'm looking at keeping an eye on it. And there isn't that energy. I'm waiting for the monologues and all the broadcasters and all the people in the press, because, you know, I've seen that, you know, that especially as a Muslim person, you know, I think that is, you know, I think it's terrible. And we've had in cricket with the Afghan women's team who want to play in exile. And, you know, we had a journalist who was sort of England and Australia, just to give you a thing, England and Australia don't want to play Afghanistan to make a point. But, you know, they'll play them in World Cups. And yet the women's are saying, let's fund us for an exile team, but no one will do it. So, yeah, I'm really interested in that side of it. But the experience, you talk about it in Qatar, while you were there, were you able to do more than just commentate and actually, because naturally there will be gay people in Qatar. Were you able to do a little bit more in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I work with the Supreme Committee, right? And we did a football camp at the Khalifa Stadium. We did a whole women's football camp there. I mean, beIN Sports covered it, but no one else wanted to talk about that. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was people from all over the country. Some of the girls came and couldn't even tell their parents. Do you know what I mean? That they were coming, and we had a whole football camp for the whole day, and those types of things. You know what I mean? Like, you can really implement. Like, I don't need to have a pride flag, right, and stand outside the Qatar Museum. I get why people would do that, but I don't need to do that to show I'm gay, to prove who I am. They respect me. I respect them. They know I'm gay. They know this is my fiance. They flew her out. Do you know what I mean? Like, no one wants to talk about that. I spoke about it on TalkSport. I'm like, they're not horrible to me. I get that there's awful laws. I get that. It's not a perfect place. I understand that. But all I can go by is what I see. And honestly, there was kids waiting for me outside the hotel, mums, dads, everything, coming to see me. And that's a country that apparently I'm not accepted in. So sometimes I think, I'm not saying put yourself in danger, because I'm not going to lie, like, my fiance's family were quite concerned about her coming, because you see everything on the news, and all the World Cup was about this terrible things. I'm glad I worked for beIN at the time, because we just covered the football.
Yeah.
I watched some of the broadcasts here, and I'm thinking, if you feel that strongly, don't go.
Yeah.
Don't go. Because trust me, if I didn't go, someone else would be there. Someone else will be taking my job. So don't come on air and just talk about all these terrible, terrible things. Because what are you doing after the fact? What of all those people that were talking about how bad Qatar is? What are they doing now? Are they still having that same energy? They probably never go back there, which I understand, but whatever.
What was the reaction from the gay community about you going out there? And I've seen, you've been very positive about it, right? Did you get a bit of pushback?
A little bit, but not as much as you'd think, because I think with me, I own it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I own it. If they paid me a lot of money to go work for beIN, but wouldn't you take that? Same as when Jordan Henderson went over to Saudi and he said he went for the football. You're not going for the football, you're going for the money. And I'm not a greedy person, but as you get older, you've all got to eat. I didn't make a lot of money from playing women's football because, at that time, I was one of the highest paid players on the team, but that was probably about a tenner. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I'm like, you know what? I am going to enjoy it because, when I've needed people to back me, they haven't. So I'm going to go and do this for me because I've always done things for other people, standing up for my old teammate, never play for England again. So I'm going to do this for me. So I didn't really care about the backlash I received because I know the perception is not always the reality. And I can go over there and I can be me, being on being on an Arab station looking like me. Can you imagine? You never imagine that would even happen. And I was on the Arabic side and the English side. I had an earpiece and everyone thought I spoke fluent Arabic because I had the earpiece translating.
You pass as local.
I know. Well, not with hair like this. But yeah, like I felt like they welcomed me. So then everybody was welcoming. Whereas you'd think someone that looks like me, someone that's gay, would get pelters, wouldn't you? From the
that's
from
what
the
you're
local.
led to believe.
Exactly.
That's what you're led to believe.
I never had a problem. And honestly, I went out on my own with my partner. Like, we didn't just go and get driven around in Rolls Royces. Do you know what I mean? Because Qatar's a very luxurious country. We went out on our own, felt safe. And honestly, like, we shouldn't. There's bigger problems here. We know this. It shouldn't have been there. But trying to boycott a World Cup 2 weeks before when we knew about it for 12 years. So why didn't people try and say we shouldn't have it there then? Why all of a sudden are they saying 2 weeks before the tournament, it shouldn't be there, shouldn't be here? Money talks at the end of the day.
In women's football now, it's a lot more accepted. You were a trailblazer. Now there's quite a few people who've come out, right? People, their teammates are in relationships. It seems like it's a lot more accepted. In men's football, it's not the same, right? There are very few male footballers that have come out. How do you explain the big difference in how it's perceived?
I think, in the women's game, everybody thinks everyone's gay. And in the men's game, you can't be gay. That's not true. Both are not true. But I think for years and years, it's what we're led to believe. And with regards to the men, we've had Thomas Hitzelsberger, Josh Cavello, Jake Daniels, and Robbie Rogers originally retired and then came out and then he got good, response and then he came out of retirement. I understand why the men don't, because we have to create the safe spaces, right, for people to be able to be comfortable. I do believe it will happen at some point soon, but this whole putting them on the front of a newspaper with witness protection, when they have those like pictures, and they're like, we know who they are, because this has happened.
Yeah.
I've seen it. And imagine if that issue, you would be so scared, because I'm telling you now, there are gay footballers, they exist, right? but it should be up to them when they want to come out. I believe their teammates know. Do you know what I mean? Like, they would know. But why is it why do I have to come out? This whole coming out of what? Do you know what I mean? Like, why do I have to announce that I'm gay? You don't have to announce you're straight. So it's like, we have to continue to create the safe space for people to feel comfortable. And look at how bad it is right now. Racism is still high. So imagine the homophobia that players might get. Do you know what I mean? I hear derogatory comments in the stands. Someone stood next to me and said these derogatory comments, but like, they realise I'm gay, but they don't think it's a homophobic comment.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, football
do
people,
they?
no, they don't even realise. And then I go and tell a steward, and then the steward, for example, will go to them, and they know it's me that said it. I mean, imagine how scary that is. So why would I report something if it doesn't feel like it's a safe space to do that? And I just think we need to continue to create safe spaces for footballers to come out when they want to. No one should feel forced to. And that's the problem. It's like, oh, when is it going to happen? I get it also, Lianne, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? When they want to.
Yeah.
It's up to them.
So by the sounds of it, this could be a while. Like, this situation may not change for a while until the overall situation changes.
I think we're getting closer, though, because we've seen, like, I think the misconception in the women's game before is that if players come out, then they would lose endorsements, right? I think it's the reverse now. Because Josh Cavello, for example, no one had really heard of him, had they? Now he's sponsored by Ralph Lauren, you know, and fair play to him. Like, he's living his life and doing what he's doing, and it's almost helped him in a weird way. I think 10 years ago, it might have been a hindrance. And I've had teammates say to me, oh, you know, if I come out, I lose it. Listen, if someone doesn't want to endorse me, they don't deserve to have me. If they don't want to endorse me because of my sexuality, you don't deserve to have me.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, embracing who you are, I guess, you know, and that takes a time, you know, as any human being takes time to embrace. But once you embrace yourself, you know, it's like, if you want to be part of me, fine. If you don't, that's fine as well.
Yeah, I think so. Well, we speak about this a lot. Like, it's draining, isn't it? Always being that person that people want to talk to about racism and homophobia. Like, people don't realise how that feels for people like us that talk about it, because we are the go-tos, which I love. The fact that people want to, if something happens, they reach out, news outlets, everything. But then those types of conversations become draining and they weigh heavy on you. So now I'm a bit more selective over what I do with regards to certain things, because other people can speak up as well. Do you know what I mean? It can't always be me and you talking about these really serious topics. There's other people that have the same opinion, that have a platform, so use it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Well, listen, I'm glad we can get you all together and do it in this kind of a space, you know, because for us, like, this podcast is, you know, like a good way of us talking about the stuff that we want to talk about. And, you know, otherwise Azim's going to be on the news every other day, and we'll just be like, look, we'll just do it on the podcast and you can get his reaction then. We have pretty much run out of time. Before we go, Man United, where are they finishing this season?
I hope in the top 4. I hope. It depends on the signings we make, and I still think we need another centre forward. I like Rasmus Højlund, but I still think there's still a little
as well as Xerxes, because you got him.
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, look at City and Arsenal. They've got strength in depth. Arsenal still need a centre forward.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. But I think I'll see. But I'll be going to Man United games this season. You know, I love that club, and hopefully we can do better. I'm surprised that Ten Hag stayed. I am, because, I mean, but to be fair, won the FA Cup, but we need better players. We do.
And we can hear you on TalkSport and a bit of Sky. You coming to Sky again? I haven't seen you there for ages.
Yeah, hopefully soon. I mean, they've asked me, but I'm away, you know, a lot. But I love going into Sky. I mean, when I've watched Sky Sports News since a kid. Even my fiance will be like, "Babe, I love you, but you've had it on for 8 hours. It's on repeat, literally." Like, but since I was a kid, in all the pubs, everything, and now every time I go to Sky, even at TalkSport, I just walk in there and every single time I'm like, I can't believe I work here. Not imposter syndrome, but I just feel so happy to work at Sky, at TalkSport. Do you know what I mean? Like, these are companies that you grow up watching on the TV and listening to.
Yeah. No, listen, I still get that feeling, and I've been there, well, on and off 20 years or something.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, that you work for work in a place that's just so iconic.
Yeah, I mean, just to finish off from my point of view, and I'm sure echo for Matt and everyone else, you've been a massive trailblazer. You've paved the way for a lot of us, whether that be, you know, coming out as gay, around speaking out on racism and supporting your friends. So massive thank you. You're a huge inspiration, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. It's been great.
Yeah, that has been awesome. Lianne Sanderson, that was a really, really, really interesting episode of It's Not Just Cricket. Don't forget to follow us on social media at INJCPod. We're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on X as well. You can get information of future podcasts, bonus material, all that kind of stuff. And we will be back next Wednesday morning. Set your alarms for the next one. We'll see you then.